And now for something completely different.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Cinematic Relief, the podcast where we do movies. Have I stalled enough? I'm Thunder.
I'm Lightning, and I won't make that noise again.
And today, well, not today, but for today's podcast, we watched Return to Oz,
Return to Obra Dinn,
which is
a Wizard of Oz story.
Return to Oz. You may be asking, what year and who starred? 1985, and Rouge Balk.
So long ago, yet still probably 50 years since The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so this movie was... Okay, so a little backstory. I had never heard of this movie. I
Yeah.
did not know it existed. Until I watched a video essay, a pretty well put together video essay, about the making of and, you know, how it compares to everything else Wizard of Oz and how maybe, Return to Oz is more in line with the, themings of the, original books.
And if I may, the day you watched this was the same day I also found out about Return of Oz and watched it with John, half of it. And he did not want to continue watching it.
Which I will, you know, I'm always like, just finish the thing, you know?
Yeah.
Even if it's bad, just, you know, just to say you did. Because, not talking specifically on John, I don't mean to rag on him, but when I ask someone how they like the thing, and they're like, oh, it was so bad, I'm like, oh, really? Why is it bad? They're like, this. I didn't even watch the second half. It's like, oh, well, you didn't, never mind. Then you didn't watch it, so I don't care what you think anymore.
I don't think he'd make comments on this movie. I just think he lost interest in
Yeah.
this movie. It was definitely weird. He definitely left on the scariest part.
Which part?
The headless woman.
Headless. Oh, yeah, the headless woman. I forget what her name was. So there is. I was looking this up the other day. Chris was here. There's like 40 Wizard of Oz books.
Yeah.
Only 14 of them were written by L. Frank Baum, the guy who wrote the first one. And update on that. If you have Google Play Books or whatever that app is called, you can get all 14 Wizard of Oz books for $1.
Wow.
Not $1 each. $1 for 14 books.
That's crazy.
Because I almost bought, there was a version that was like 5 of them for $8. I was like, that's a pretty good deal. And then all the comments were like, no. There's a version where it's all of them for $1.
I really, having watched this film, I really want to dive deeper into the world of Oz.
Me too. And I can honestly say that I didn't have that thought watching Wizard of Oz.
Right. Well, it's because you think that's the end of the story.
Right.
But now we know there's more, and we know that there's a ton of books, and it makes me wonder if Wicked is one of the books. It probably is, right?
I don't
It's probably
think,
canonical.
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Why not?
'Cause
I mean, like, when this person was writing Wicked, why not? There's so much. There's supposedly more backstory in books than any high fantasy ever made.
Because I think Wicked is a retelling,
Oh, okay.
like these characters, but they're in different, you know, like Riverdale, you know,
Yeah.
for a lack of a better example. So Disney made this film. Disney acquired the rights to Wizard of Oz, and then they made this. And the movie was almost not made. But literally George Lucas and Steven Spielberg stepped in and were like, "Hey, make this movie." And then they were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, okay, we'll make it with your money."
What a weird hill to die on, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. Like, we're gonna pull this movie to the finish line. This is the one we're gonna do.
I'm not upset that they did that though.
No, but there's so many other projects that they had nothing to do with that they could have pulled from the grave.
Right.
This was a weird one. They they
Right.
chose.
So, how did you like it?
The story was good. I had some issues. It had trying to think of another film that does this to compare it to, but in the cinematic world of Oz,
Mm-hmm.
we have some legacy characters.
Yeah.
We spend almost no time with them, but they
Right.
are in the film.
Right.
Weird choice. I also don't care enough about the new characters that if you have Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Cowardly Lion in it, that I only want maybe 2 sentences of script out of those 3.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, Scarecrow kind of had plot relevance. Tin Man and Cowardly Lion are barely in the film. She doesn't even say
Right.
bye to Tin Man.
I know, that's what I'm talking about. Just don't put him in.
Yeah.
Have Scarecrow. You know, if you're
It really gives off the impression that Dorothy has no sentimental value for the first
Her
journey,
first trip to
the first
Oz?
journey she went on, which is wholly untrue because the first half hour of this movie is her fucking desperately clinging to the
Yeah.
hope that it still exists.
Right. Also,
Also, the timeline
yes,
doesn't add up.
which maybe there is maybe that's touched upon in one of the books, but I surely don't know about it.
Yeah.
The costumes were phenomenal and awful in Pumpkinhead, awful name. Jack Pumpkinhead.
Mm-hmm.
You pointed out they literally make his head change shape depending on the expression he's trying to give off.
Yeah, there was some weird early CGI implemented in this movie in
Yeah.
the ways you wouldn't expect. Very classic Star Wars in its let's sort of invent CGI for this movie.
Yeah.
You know?
But it was excellent. It made me wonder how, is it a giant puppet? Is it I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, it had to have been a real person here's what I think. Real person, green screened head, and then no, see if it was a newer movie I'd say real person, green screen head, replaced head with CG pumpkin. But that pumpkin definitely wasn't always CG.
No.
Because it's 1985, the year one of there being CGI. So I don't know. It's very interesting. There definitely wasn't a human head in that pumpkin head.
No.
Because the neck was too small.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's weird. It might have been a giant puppet. That's a good point. I know there was a little person in TikTok.
Oh, you looked that up?
Yeah, I remember that from the video, but I don't know what is operating Jack Pumpkinhead, which, my God, if that isn't a confusing name from 1993 onward.
But that was an example of great costume work, and a horrendous one is the Wheelers. They looked they either should have been supernatural or human, but they should not have been an odd mix of both, with helmets that made them look so much scarier, but you only see it for that one
right,
jump scare scene.
That's the thing, creatures that look like that is a cool idea, but when you show the human's face and the human,
It takes it away.
it
instantly.
makes it feel like that creature is exactly what it is in our world, which is a person moving like that
Right.
on wheels.
Horrifying. The first moment I saw them was horrifying. Then I saw his dumb face, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, before the face reveal, I was like, this is a pretty okay alternative to the honestly very creepy flying monkeys.
Yeah.
And then he was like, just kidding, I'm a white dude.
And also the most overzealous actor in this film.
Oh my God, I know. You and I were talking about how it seems like he got his one. He probably had more lines, and they cut him.
Oh, yeah.
because he was so.
He just didn't. He did acting the way I would expect. If I went to a college production of something,
Yeah.
and there were college actors there, and they were trying their hardest to emote on stage, and it just was laid on way too heavily, and they'll figure it out as they go along in their career.
Yeah.
That's what this dude felt
Yeah,
like.
I can see what you're trying to say.
Drama kids. I looked at him and I was like, oh, this dude was a drama kid and still is one. Managed to pull down a Hollywood role.
A speaking role in a
Yeah.
Disney film, yeah.
And he just tried way too hard.
No, there was a era of Disney movies where Disney was just like, let's do weird live action stuff. And I think it was like right before I was born, because I keep hearing about these movies and seeing these movies like now. Like like a couple of years ago, I recently watched Hook. I'd never seen Hook before.
Oh, really?
Didn't much care for Hook. Not the podcast we're doing now, but this felt like Hook to me, where it's like Disney was just one day like, let's make a live action version of a thing that we own, but we'll do it different from when it was the first time, and it'll be a little weird.
Okay.
And I feel like, critically speaking, Hook worked and Return to Oz didn't.
I can see that.
I really liked Return to Oz, and I think one of its biggest issues is that it's too short.
Okay.
I feel like, and I feel like I expected this movie to be like 2.5 hours long,
Mm-hmm.
and it was only about an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
I feel like it had, I mean, it definitely had a 3-act structure. Act 1 was before Oz, and Act 2 was before everything in Oz before the Gnome King, and then Act 3 was basically the entire Gnome King
Right.
logic fight, or whatever you want to call that. But I feel like if we spent a little bit more time in Act 2,
Mm-hmm.
because I mentioned this while we were watching it, it just sort of like, the movie started, we're not in Oz, all of a sudden we're in Oz, and then like literally a half hour goes by, and then we're in the climax.
Yeah.
And it felt very rushed, and I can only assume that's because this movie probably took a lot of money to make, because everything was practical, and they have
Right.
these incredibly beautiful set pieces.
Huge
and
sets.
Huge, incredible sets for like every scene.
One scene they definitely should have had time for and explain to me was, what the hell happened to Munchkinland?
Oh, I know. Yeah, when you see the yellow brick road, it's like covered in like plants, and like it's all broken and shattered and stuff. And
we know it had only been 6 months since Dorothy first arrived at
right.
Oz.
And Munchkinland is literally a forest. Like, it's not even like a barren, like, it's not like, oh, look, there's the Munchkinland but it's all
The
decrepit.
remnants of the
Like, she's just in a fucking forest, and she's
Yeah.
like, oh, this is where the Witch of the East was killed, right here in
Mhm.
this forest.
and there's my house, the only thing to survive of Munchkinland.
Yeah. Which is also odd, because
Oh, yeah.
if
You think they would have cleaned up that debris right from the get-go?
No, even weirder. So I thought, if Oz is real, what house does she wake up in at the end of Wizard of Oz?
Oh, right. Yeah,
If
that's
her
a huge
house,
plot hole.
if her house is canonically stuck in Oz, and it is, we saw it,
We saw her house.
and Oz isn't a fever dream. I mean, it might be, but let's assume for the sake of this house conversation that Oz is a real, tangible place, and Dorothy is not an actual crazy person. Where was she at the end of Wizard of Oz when she wakes up in the famous scene where she's like, and you were there, and fucking you were there?
And fucking you were there? Because she's in her room in that scene.
You'd think, right?
Well, yeah. I saw her go into that room. Here is why I am convinced, after seeing Wizard of Oz and Return to Oz, that Dorothy is insane.
And Oz is, in fact, not real.
And Oz is, in fact, not real. One, what you just said. The house is there. It shouldn't have been there. And that could easily be explained with she's insane.
Right.
Her waking up from Wizard of Oz, she could have been literally in a field, but in her head, she's in her room. because
Okay.
the house is getting rebuilt in Return to Oz. That is
Right.
factual. We
Right.
we see that. The little girl who ends up being
Ozma.
Ozma
Princess of whatever. Yeah.
is never acknowledged in the real, quote unquote, real world by anybody.
Right.
And she brings Dorothy to Oz.
And she herself materializes in the real world.
Yes. There's a scene where Dorothy is about to be traumatically put through electroshock therapy
Right.
and the power goes off. I think the moment the power goes off, we are no longer in the real world, but we are completely in Dorothy's illusion.
Yeah. So you think they actually went through with the electroshock
Yes.
therapy?
Yes.
I mean, that scene was so perfectly shot to confirm that theory.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's interesting with movies like this because literally everything that you could ever question is like, oh, it's all in her head.
Yep.
You know?
And I'm curious if within these 40 books, if they explain if
there's
Oz is
fucking
real or
40
not.
If there's 40 books and a map and shit, it's gotta be real,
Yeah.
right? And not... She can't be in every book, right? One of them's called The Cowardly Lion of Oz.
Even if Oz wasn't real canonically in the books, I don't think it would take me out of it. I'd still be curious to know what's going on in Oz. Like, let's say book 22, they announced that Oz is a figment of Dorothy's imagination. But book 23 is coming out. It's called Courage the Cowardly Dog is what I was about to say.
Courage of Oz.
Courage of Oz.
That's the other thing. All the Wizard of Oz books are like blank blank of Oz.
Yeah. I would... book 22, Oz is bullshit. It's all in Dorothy's head. Book 23, Cowardly Lion of Oz. I'm reading Cowardly Lion of Oz. Sure, why not?
Book 22 is called Dorothy's Bullshit of Oz. And book 23 is called Some New Shit Stirring Up in Oz.
But you know what I mean? I don't think Oz being fake would deter me from enjoying the story.
Interesting, because I disagree. I think even if I'm one book in and they're like, yeah, it was all fake, but there's more books to flesh out this fake world that doesn't exist.
See, I think that's not enough. I agree with you. Book 1 and book 2 starts. This is all bullshit, by the way. Yeah, I'm out. That's why it's like...
Well, that's even worse if you string me along for 20
But
books.
now you're invested in these characters. You don't want to hear how these characters end.
Not now that I know that they're fake.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
see, I don't think I'd
It's
care.
like when sometimes TV shows will do this where the last second the show like zooms out and it never happened. All of the show wasn't real, you know?
Yeah.
I hate that shit.
I hate that too, but if this is... See, maybe I'm thinking too deep about this, but if Dorothy is a real person in this story, and Oz is an ongoing illusion in her head, and each book is the next chapter of this illusion that is continuously going on, I think I'm still on board. Because even though it's a figment of her imagination, it's still an ongoing story. I don't know. That wouldn't deter me from caring about these characters. Because they can still die. They can still have arcs.
True. I guess at a certain point it becomes Winnie the Pooh then, huh?
Yeah.
If it's all fake, then
Right.
then none of it's fake.
Right. That's exactly where I'm coming from.
I think it's the stringing me along for a number of issues
And then finding out.
If page 1 of book 1 is like, and it's all in her head.
I don't know, though. I think that's a cool reveal down the line.
No, it's
It's a risk. Absolutely.
Yeah,
And it's not
yeah.
for everybody. I don't think I would be deterred if I was to find that out. And then you get the interesting idea of, she's nuts.
right.
And now she's trying to defend herself to all these people.
At that point, it's like, how long can this go on for?
40 books.
40 books, apparently, yeah.
But that's what I'm
I
saying
wonder
is I
if
feel like
the-
the story gets richer with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if the non-L Frank Baum stuff is any good at all. It must be, right? If they kept it...
They made 40 of them.
40 plus, I think. I think it was like 42 or 43 or something like that.
Jeez.
I know there's at least 40.
I mean, I guess so.
But no, Return of Oz was really good. I really want to talk about the Gnome King because I liked
know.
him a lot. He
I
was
know you
really,
did.
really cool. He's like made out of rocks.
Yeah.
Also, his name wasn't with a G, which might have been a subtitle issue. We're not
Mhm.
quite sure.
Even so, still not what gnomes are.
Still, gnomes are not rock people, right? But he's like in a wall, right? And then there's like this thing he's doing where he's got a room full of artifacts, and one at a time, Dorothy and her compatriots are going to go into the room.
Very
touch-
Crusaders of the Last Ark. You've never seen Indiana Jones.
Is that the first one?
That's the third one.
Oh,
Where
okay.
he has to find, he's in a room full of cups, and he has to find the cup from the Last Supper,
Interesting.
Jesus Christ. And if he picks wrong, he's dead.
Yeah, okay.
Which is I'm sorry. Now I'm curious when The Last Crusade came out. If Return to... Well, no, it doesn't matter because it's a book that definitely happened.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Did Steven Spielberg rip off Return to Oz?
Maybe.
He
Quite
did it very
possibly.
well. And then the movies came out like probably a year apart.
So you go into the room, you pick an artifact that you think might be the Scarecrow. If you pick wrong, you get turned into an artifact. And they don't do a good job of explaining this part, but for every new artifact he has, he becomes less attached to the wall,
Yeah.
but still made out of stone. And
But
the
he
less,
starts taking more human
right,
form.
of the less attached from the wall he becomes, he stops being stop animation and he
Yeah.
becomes an actor with makeup on.
That was really cool, especially for the 80s. It goes from stop motion animation to claymation to live action.
Yeah. And then back to claymation for the big,
Yeah.
finale set piece.
Well, back to claymation, then back to stop motion animation, which is crazy.
yeah.
I don't think there's much of a difference between the two, except one's clay and the other I think is just like
Yeah.
pictures.
Yeah.
That was really well done, and you spotted that right off the bat.
Because he turns into a real actor dude, and you're like, what? But I was like, oh, it's because he's been turning like more and more
Human.
not more and more human, but more and more less stuck in this wall. I don't know. It's
Right.
hard to explain. It's really okay. This is why I want to read the books. In Wizard of Oz, the movie with Judy Garland, the wizard, the titular wizard, is the leader of the Emerald City.
Yes.
What they don't explain to you, and what they barely explain in this movie, but what they definitely don't explain to you in Wizard of Oz, is that after the wizard left, Scarecrow took over as King of Oz.
Yes.
Then the Gnome King comes back, and he's like, who the fuck is king? Scarecrow? That ain't me. These are my emeralds. So he takes all the emeralds from Emerald City, and he's like, these were mine, and he like kidnaps the true king, the Scarecrow. And then that's where Dorothy comes in. Dorothy comes in during the midst of this like political debacle where it's like, but I'm king now, but I'm supposed to be king. And then when everything's said and done, Dorothy like rescues this weird fairy girl who turns out to be the actual ruler of Oz. And Scarecrow is like, oh, but of course, here's your crown.
Yeah.
I want to read the book version of that is what I'm getting at, I
See
guess.
if it goes down that way, or see if it's explained a bit more.
It's got to be explained a bit more, right?
I think
And
so.
I'm curious to it's just really cool. Also, the Gnome King has the ruby slippers,
Yeah.
which up until I watched this movie, I was under the impression that the ruby slippers literally have the power of teleportation, but
Right.
it would appear as though they just do whatever you want, literally.
A wish.
Because she puts the slippers on and she said, I wish everyone who was turned to stone wasn't, and that the Emerald City was back to normal, and that the Gnome King was dead. And then it all happens. I was
It's
like-
better than the Dragon Balls.
Yes. No, those ruby slippers are so much more powerful fictional artifacts than I thought they were.
Fun fact. You know the actual ruby slippers from Wizard of Oz are missing?
Oh, really?
Yeah. There
The
was
prop?
the prop. There was like $1 million bounty for anybody who could return them
So
to where
there's-
they belong.
So they're still missing? They're not in a museum or anything?
yeah.
That's crazy. I wonder if they're literally missing or if someone has them.
Oh, someone stole them. and there was $1 million bounty, just return them. And it was like, you will get this, I think it was $1 million. You will get this bounty up until this date. It was like 10 years later, and we're past it.
Right, of course.
Nobody returned them. What the hell are you doing with the ruby slippers?
That's what I'm saying. They might be literally lost somewhere.
I don't know. You don't just lose those.
Stole them and then,
Oh, yeah. Person stole them and then lost them.
Person
Sure.
steals them. They forget, they get old. They get thrown out with, oh, what's this old box of junk, Grandpa?
Grandpa stole the ruby slippers.
Grandpa, I stole the ruby slippers. Get him. He's running off. Yeah, no, there was a lot of... This movie was advertised as a sequel to the original Judy Garland film. And I get why they did that. It was so people would see the goddamn film. But it really doesn't feel like it should have been. Obviously, the movie starts with Dorothy, and she's like, remember when this happened? The last movie happened? I'm going to go back.
What took me out of that, obviously the actors were extremely old, if still alive, and didn't want to reprise their roles, I'm sure. I did not care for the costumed Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion. I wish they had just recast similar costumes from the first one. That would have put me more in the world of the Judy Garland.
If it was a real makeup person
yes.
playing the... I see.
I'm pretty sure actually Tin Man died from his makeup at some point.
One of them did, yeah. I think two of them might have actually. Yeah, that's the other thing.
So just do that safer.
There must have been so much money put... The Cowardly Lion was a big, giant puppet, and he was in 2 scenes.
Yes.
And he didn't speak.
No.
In the background of the crowd, there's like an incredibly intricate frog dude.
Yeah.
Who gets no screen time. He's just in the crowd. He's just a member of the crowd. And someone worked for like weeks on that fucking frog. I know how old, ILM puppetry shit worked. Someone put their heart and soul in that frog, and he didn't get a goddamn speaking line. so much. Movies aren't made like that anymore.
No.
Movies aren't made like Return to Oz anymore.
For better or worse.
Right.
But that's the thing is, if it's a sequel to that took me out of it. The Scarecrow's like mouth didn't move.
Right.
And it's like...
Did he talk?
Yeah.
He did, right?
He said but Dorothy or something like that.
Right, he did, but his mouth never moved.
Yeah, and it's like...
But Tin Man probably could have talked, but they didn't give him a chance to.
Right. Do you know what would have cost less money? Or not have been as hard to do?
What?
Just putting some asshole in a Scarecrow costume and letting his mouth flap around while he says actual words.
Yeah. Have you seen the 2013 film Oz the Great and Powerful? Starring James Franco and Mila Kunis. So,
is that related at all
to Wizard of Oz?
Judy Garland, Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. So it's supposed to be a prequel.
Okay.
It's like basically the movie is like the wizard, played by James Franco, was a dude in our world who worked at a carnival. He gets teleported to Oz via what are these called? Tornado, because that's, I guess, the only way to get there.
Except in this film.
And then Oz is this crazy detailed, like, CGI green screen set. And he meets Mila Kunis, and she looks normal, but then he, like, wrongs her later, and it turns out that she's the Wicked Witch of the West.
Okay.
It's not good, is what I'm getting at. There are some cool parts, and it's well acted, but I would not recommend this film, especially after seeing Return to Oz and liking it as much as I did. I would not recommend Oz the Great and Powerful. There's also, okay, so you know how the Wicked Witch, spoiler alert for like an almost 100-year-old movie, but you know how the Wicked Witch of the West, you throw water on her and then she melts and she's dead forever now? There's a part before her skin turns green, where Mila Kunis' Wicked Witch of the West is sad about something, so she cries, she sheds one tear, and it burns her face.
Jesus.
So she's even weak to her own teardrops. That's how weak to water she is.
Yeah, I mean, if she was a Pokemon, that would be like 4 times weakness.
No,
water.
fuck you. I saw Cyndaquil cry all the goddamn time. He wasn't like, ow, ow, ow.
No, that's what I'm saying, because he's only 2 times weak to water. She's got to be like 4 or 8 times weak to water.
Okay. No, what I'm saying is you shouldn't be. Fuck you. I don't care what your weakness is. You shouldn't be weak to your own tears. Stupid ass fucking. One of the he's got companions just like she do, and one of his is a flying monkey, and
of course it is.
It's voiced by Zach Braff.
Okay.
That's neither here nor there. I just wanted to talk about Zach Braff. I feel like he doesn't get enough credit.
What does he have to say?
Who? Ebert?
Yeah.
He didn't see this one. He
What
also
a
didn't see Oz
loser.
the Great and Powerful because he died.
Oh.
Oz the Great and Powerful came out in 2013. So do I look up what Roger Ebert thought of The Wizard of Oz? I'm sure he loved it.
I'm sure he said 10 years later that he loved it.
Robert Ebert? No. Well, I found it. Roger Ebert. Yep, here we go. Okay. Well,
What year? Can you tell me what year he did this analysis of Wizard of Oz?
yes, Roger Ebert's review of Wizard of Oz, titled The Wizard of Oz, was released to the masses on 1996.
Oh my god. Okay, so if he sucks the Wizard of Oz dick in this review, it counts for nothing. That was 60 years after the film came out.
Yeah.
Honestly, how petty are you? Why are you reviewing a 60-year-old movie?
You know what, Chris? Let's find out together. How many stars do you think he gave The Wizard of Oz?
4 out of 4.
You are correct.
Of course, why wouldn't he? It's 1996, and this film has been a hit for his entire life.
As a child, I simply did not notice whether a movie was in color or not.
Oh.
Roger, I think you might be an idiot. The movies themselves were such an overwhelming mystery that if they wanted to be in black and white, that was their business. He literally sounds like he's talking about homosexuals. It was not until I saw The Wizard of Oz for the first time that I consciously noticed black and white versus color as Dorothy was blown out of Kansas and into Oz.
So didn't everybody else.
Yeah.
That wasn't a revelation of his own. So didn't literally anybody who saw that movie.
What did I think? It made good sense to me.
Even me, the first time I saw Wizard of Oz, which was probably roughly around the time he made this review, which was roughly 60 years after that movie's release, I was like, oh, it was black and white and then it wasn't.
Right, yeah. I don't think it matters what year. Like, when I saw this movie, I remember vividly that I was watching a fucking Blue's Clues marathon, and then Wizard of Oz came on TV, and my mom was like, let's watch it. You've never seen it. I was like, okay, and I was still blown away, even though Blue's Clues is also in color. Imagine the asshole kid who's like, man, fucking Blue's Clues is in color. Fuck this movie. What the fuck is it trying to prove? The switch from black and white to, he's still on about this. The switch from black and white, this is a new paragraph. The switch from black and white to color would have had a special resonance in 1939 when the movie was made. Almost all films were still being made in black and white, and the cumbersome new color cameras came with a Technicolor consultant from the factory who stood next to the cinematographer and officiously suggested higher light levels. Shooting in color might have been indicated because the film was MGM's response to the huge success of Disney pioneering color animated feature The Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which came out in 1937. If Wizard of Oz began in one way and continued in another, that was also the history of the production. Richard Thorpe, the original director, was fired after 12 days. George Cukor filled in for 3 days, long enough to tell Judy Garland to lose the wig and the makeup, and then Victor Fleming took over. When Fleming went to Gone with the Wind, King Vidor did some of the Munchkin sequences and
this
the Kansas
movie had
sequences.
like 5 directors?
Yeah, it looks like. There were cast changes, too. After Buddy Ebsen, as the Tin Man, had an allergic reaction to the silvery makeup, he was replaced by Jack Haley. Musical numbers were recorded and then never used. Margaret Hamilton, the actress who plays the Wicked Witch of the West, was seriously burnt when she went up in a puff of smoke. Even Toto was out of commission for 2 weeks after being stepped on by a crew member.
Oh, Jesus.
That's not necessarily a production... Like, he wasn't, like, burned terribly by a set piece. That's just some asshole not looking where your famous dog is. We study all these details, I think, because The Wizard of Oz fills such a large space in our imagination. It somehow seems real and important in a way most movies don't. Is that because we see it first when we're young, or simply because it is a wonderful movie, or because it sounds some buried universal note, some archetype, or deeply felt myth? Eileen turns to the third possibility, that the elements of Wizard of Oz powerfully fill a void that exists inside many children. For kids of a certain age, home is everything, the center of the world. But over the rainbow, dimly guessed at, is the wide earth fascinating and terrifying. There's a deep fundamental fear that events might conspire to transport the child from the safety of home and strain him far away in a strange land. And what would we hope to find there? Why new friends to advise and protect him? And Toto, of course, being children, because children have such a strong symbiotic relationship with their pets that they assume they would get lost together. How did you like the film, Roger? Slap. How did you like the film?
What a prophetic analysis of the film Wizard of Oz. If only it had been made, I don't know, maybe 10 years after the movie came out or something. Not 60. Say whatever. Write your magnum opus of reviews as much as you want, Roger Ebert. It's still 60 years after that movie came out, and nobody gives a damn what you have to say about it at this point. He's not going to sit there and say, tell me how wonderful The Wizard of Oz was. I know. I've seen it. Everybody's seen it 1,000,000 times at this point.
I was going to read this whole thing as a joke and then scream about if he liked it or not. This is the longest one I think I've ever seen.
Of course it is. The movie's been out for 60 years. He knows every bit of information there is for this movie.
The deep universal appeal explains why so many different people from many backgrounds have a compartment of their memory reserved to The Wizard of Oz. And then he talks about an African-American writer who liked the movie as a child. They're touching on key lessons from childhood. They're talking about how the movie can be liked by adults and children. Wizard of Oz has a wonderful service of comedy and music, special effects, and excitement, but we still watch it 6 decades later because its underlining story penetrates straight to the deepest insecurities of childhood. If you wanted to make a video essay, homie... Judy
Just
Garland
wait 10 years.
Judy Garland had, I gather, an unhappy childhood. What the fuck could that possibly matter? Longest paragraph so far about that. Her friends on the Yellow Brick Road, and then he names them all, were projections of every child's fears. Are we real? Are we ugly and silly? Are we brave enough? In helping them, Dorothy's helping herself because she's a child. Now we're talking about the actors. And he talks about the book. Okay. The actors had all come up through a tradition of vaudeville and revue comedy and played the characters with a sublime unself-consciousness. Maybe it helped that none of them knew they were making a great movie. They seem relaxed and loose in many scenes, and as if the roles were a lark. L. Frank Baum's book had been filmed before Oliver Hardy played Tin Man in 1925, and this version, while ambitious, was overshadowed...
There's another Wizard of Oz?
I guess. Yeah.
I want to see that.
I want to see it, too. It's probably a black and white silent film, but I'd see it.
Yeah.
And this version, while ambitious, was overshadowed by the studio's simultaneous preparation of Gone with the Wind. Garland was already a star when she made The Wizard of Oz, but not a great star that came in the 1940s inspired by Wizard of Oz. What a weird sentence. He talks about how the special effects and the lighting and the imagery, talks about the storytelling, finally talks about the story. There are good and bad adult figures in Oz. Talking about the ending has always seemed poignant to me. Dorothy is back in Kansas, but the color is drained from the film, and her magical friends are mundane once again. Quote, "The land of Oz wasn't such a bad place to be stuck in," unquote, decided young Terry McMillan, discontented with her life in Michigan. It beat the farm in Kansas. Don't know what that's referring to. Think I skipped a bit of context earlier to help me understand what the fuck he just quoted. He liked it.
That's
Long story short, he liked it. We can
glad-
all agree.
Good.
Wizard of Oz is a good film.
Yeah, he had 60 years to ponder if he liked it or not. I'm glad he came to that conclusion.
I want to know, like, do you think December 1996, do you think that's like the month without a paddle came out and he just had nothing to review and he was just like, fuck, I've been sitting on this Wizard of Oz piece for a rainy day like this.
I think I don't know. I think it's a load of bullshit. I think he had no right to review a movie that's been out for 60 years. Jesus. Why don't I review the Lord of the Rings books right now? I'll let you know how they were.
Yeah, we'll break. You read them all and we'll come back.
Yeah.
We'll finish the podcast.
Yeah, in case none of you knew, they did pretty well. Jesus. One related story I've never told anybody.
Ooh.
When I was young, and when I mean young, I mean maybe 5 or 6, I had no concept of time, quite obviously.
Right, me either.
And this thing I'm about to tell you, as I got a little older, I had, that meme where that woman is just staring off and there's math going on. I had that moment. My dad told me that one of my mom's cousins was one of the Munchkin kids.
Okay.
Is that what the Lollipop kids? Sorry.
Right.
Told me he was one of the Lollipop kids.
Okay.
That's obviously impossible.
Right.
This movie came out in 1938. That guy probably wasn't born until
Right.
the 1960s. And I believed it. And I asked him. He had no clue what I was talking about, but I was like, my dad told me you were one of the Lollipop kids. It was just weird. It was funny. But then as I got a little older, I was like, wait a minute. I don't think this is true. And I watched the credits. I was waiting for his name. I was like, well, where is he? Did I miss him? There's a very good chance I missed him.
Next Thanksgiving, you're like, so I rewatched it, and you're not credited. You should probably contact somebody for the next re-release.
Oh, my God. Yeah. But, so I do not have a family member that I know of who worked on The Wizard of Oz. But what if I did?
But what if I did? I recently saw The Wizard of Oz and...
Test. Okay, sorry.
Test. Hello? We good?
I thought my mic cut out. My bad.
Oh, okay. I recently watched The Wizard of Oz, and I could have sworn... You know the horse that changes color?
Yeah, that tripped me out as a kid.
Well, me too. And I have a vivid memory of that horse literally changing color in front of my eyes. And I was like, as an adult watching it again, I was like, how do they do that without CGI? There's always a cut.
No.
Yeah.
Because I always thought the same thing. I thought it happened as he was walking.
I had a vivid memory
Me too.
of him turning from red into orange into yellow. And I watched it again recently, like a year ago, and they cut away and cut back, and every time they do, it's a different colored horse.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing. That's why it blew my mind.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
And I only recently, while we were watching Return to Oz, had I thought about that, and I was like, I guess they messed with the hues and stuff.
Yeah.
And just did some crazy ass 1938 top of the line. Because today that's whatever. Even in the 70s, even in the 60s, it's like, oh, it changed. Not the 60s. In like the 70s, 80s, it's like, oh, you changed the color. Cool. Good job.
Because they had, I don't remember what the movie was called, forgive me, but I was watching Corridor Crew Reacts to CGI, and they were doing a really old movie, like, definitely shouldn't have CGI in it. And it was a sequence, it was a black and white movie, and it was a sequence where a woman was turning into a witch, like she was secretly a witch, and this was the big reveal of, like, I was the witch.
Mm.
And it looks like they do a face morph in CGI. Like, she's literally has a normal face and then it's covered in makeup. But they explained what they did was they had a certain hue of makeup that, when shot in black and white, it would not show up. So they shot it with one type of camera and she looked normal, and then they switched to a different type of camera, and then she had all the witch makeup on.
Oh, wow.
So it could have, like, they had ways of doing cool stuff like that back then. But no, it's always a cut.
That's some good smoke and mirrors stuff right there. The fact that you and I were both like, that horse changed colors in front of my eyes.
Because my uncle was like, how would they have done that back then? I was like, that's the point. That's why I was so freaked out. Because I was like, how did they do it? They don't have CGI.
Right.
They don't even have the beginnings of CGI.
Right. Now I want to watch that scene real quick.
Yeah.
I want to see what it looks like. That's crazy.
But no, Return to Oz, I really liked it. I recommend it. It's on Disney Plus, which I don't know why, but I was like so surprised. I was learning about this movie. I was like, oh, Disney made it, huh? Let me just check Disney Plus. Probably not there. And then it was. I was like, fuck. I'll watch it right now. Then I waited for my friend Chris.
Yes.
Unintentionally. I met up with you. I was like, have you heard of Return to Oz? And you were like, shut up. We're watching it.
You said that, and in my head I was like, why did you just say that? I don't think I talked to him about the fact that I just saw it, or half of it, 2 days ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked it a lot. I think story-wise, okay?
Yeah.
Not what I would have done.
Okay.
If someone said, make a sequel to Judy Garland's Wizard of Oz, make it more in tune with the themings and events that happen in the books, and don't make it a musical. Story-wise, I don't think I would have done that. I mean, knowing what I know about the Gnome King, I thought that stuff was really rad.
Yeah.
But the back end of them explaining how it's a sequel and why Oz is the way it is was just very...
together.
It was very muddied down with that at the beginning of the film, and it put a bad taste in my mouth. So by the time the Gnome King stuff came, I was like, oh, hell yeah, give it to me.
Okay.
Because it was really good. But the beginning of the movie was definitely like, what are they trying to say now? Okay, if you say so. The Munchkins are what? Okay, whatever. But I do recommend it. I ended up liking it a lot.
Nice.
And I think that does it for us.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Real quick, we are, I don't know when this episode's going out, probably not for a few weeks, but we are in fact on Twitch now. The link will be in the description, where our goal is being live every Sunday at 5. And we will be live various other times that aren't that.
Like
whenever the fuck I feel like it. Get off my back. And until next time, Ivan Thunder.
I'm Lightning.
Stay safe, stay clean, and thank you, Car, for beeping and ruining my outro.